Yo guys, the Modern Rogue is brought to you by the folks over at Rad Power Bikes. Hit up the URL in the description below and use promo code ROGUE at checkout to get $50 off. Woo! If you were to do an impression of me ordering a drink at a bar, what would it look like?
Hey boss, can I get a, can I get a Bud Light? Thanks, man.
Bud Light, thank you! Because I'm a Modern Rogue! Back again at Wizard Academy with the Vice Chancellor and co-founder of the Whiskey Marketing School, Mr. Daniel Whittington. Talk us through the experience of how to order a whiskey and sound like a badass.
Okay, so there's only one rule to start, and that's the definition of good whiskey is whiskey you like to drink. And the right way to drink whiskey is the way you want to. And anyone who argues with that is a pretentious asshole.
Okay.
And if you weren't sure, now you know.
There's a mantra going through my head right now. All whiskey is good whiskey.
Taste is subjective. And you can't, if I said, what's your favorite food?
I like shrimp cocktail.
Okay, well, I've had a shrimp cocktail. You're wrong.
Okay. That's a cheap way to feel superior to someone else.
Yes, exactly. Right now, in that interaction, who looks like the it's not Brian,
me. Not
right?
me.
Split the difference.
Yeah. No, so I asked the God of Brian World, what's something you love? He tells us, shrimp cocktail, I have spoken. And then we try to argue with that. That's insane, because that's a subjective reality. So the same thing goes for whiskey.
This is actually a really good point, because the first step to ordering drinks like a boss is to know what you like.
Yeah.
And if you like it, then you are above reproach.
Yeah. Now, anyway, the point is, no matter what we talk about right now, that we're not defining good and bad, we're just defining what it's gonna do and what you're gonna get.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
4 ways to order whiskey. Neat or a shot. Neat and a shot are basically the same thing. It just means a whiskey with nothing in it.
Got it.
Now, neat means you want to sip it. A shot means you want to get drunk quicker.
Yep.
Right?
Okay.
Or maybe you've had a long day. The second one is ice. That's called whiskey rocks.
Yep.
Right? Or give me a whiskey, 2 ice, you know, if you want less ice and so on. And that's fine. And we're about to experience this. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Now, I can't make you a cocktail. The third way is cocktail, right? Whiskey in something. I'm not gonna make you a cocktail right now, but essentially,
We have a guy.
yeah, you do. And my hands are clean, by the way. Unlike vodka, which just exists to make other things alcoholic.
Yes.
And I'm really gonna offend a lot of vodka drinkers all of a sudden.
It's true.
So what we're doing, whiskey, when you add it to something, adds an actual flavor. So you don't, like any recipe, you add it based on what flavor you want to add. You can't just add any whiskey to anything. A rye whiskey, as we learned in the last video, tastes very different than a Scotch. So that's cocktails, they're off the table. Add whiskey to something based on what you want to drink. Now, ice does 2 things when you add it to whiskey. First, it waters it down like crazy. And second, it changes the temperature to a point where you can only taste about 60% of what's happening.
I never thought about the fact that the colder a drink gets, the less you're able to taste it. That makes sense, though.
Why do you serve wine at cellar temperature? Or good beer at cellar temperature, right? Why is the shittiest beer in the world advertised as the coldest beer known to man? So you don't have to taste it.
Whatever that beer is.
Your tongue is not equipped to taste extreme temperatures. So if you've ever had a day when you broke down and had break room coffee because you just ran out, but you desperately needed coffee, and the first sip is like, oh, it's not good, but it's gonna do. 5 minutes later, it's cooled down a little. Your next sip is like, oh my God, what have I done with my life? This is a horrible mistake. I should have had water, right? That's because now you can actually taste it. The same thing with whiskey. If you make whiskey cold or you put your alcohol in the freezer, what you're doing is burying 60 to 80% of the flavor. Wow.
And if you have cheap whiskey, maybe that's not a bad idea.
It may help. Remember, this is not about good or bad with these ice, right?
Yeah.
The second thing you're doing is watering it down so much that you end up, say I go to a coffee shop or I'm hanging out with you and you say, let's get a coffee. And you're like, do you like coffee? I love coffee. Well, what do you get? Well, like a triple white mochaccino with extra whipped cream and a caramel. It's like, well, it's not really coffee. It's more like
Sorry, I thought you wanted coffee.
It's like a coffee-flavored dessert beverage, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you bring that person a red eye or a straight shot of espresso, you're gonna ruin their life. So when someone pours a ton of whiskey on ice and it's all they drink, or whiskey and Coke, well, they don't like whiskey, they like whiskey-flavored things. Whiskey-flavored water, whiskey-flavored Coke. That's fine. Except that if you poured that someone a straight shot of whiskey, you're gonna ruin their life.
Some lives need to be ruined.
I agree with that.
They deserve it.
Now, I drink whiskey on the rocks in the summer because in Texas it's damn hot. Here's how you choose your whiskey on the rocks. You choose knowing what you're about to do. You're about to water it down and bury most of the flavor. You guys are gonna have to share these, but remember, 45% alcohol kills all that ails you.
That's
so
right.
You'll be okay. Okay, so Buffalo Trace, this is bourbon on the rocks.
And as we learned before, bourbon means
Corn.
Kentucky-ish
Well,
corn.
no.
Like
American.
theoretically, yes,
Yeah.
it means American.
At least 51% corn.
Got
now
it.
for our Scotch on the rocks, we're doing Glenfiddich 12.
That's a good one.
We never talked about what the numbers mean.
I'll tell you about that. Okay,
yeah.
so 12 just means in Scottish whiskey, and this is less true in others, but it's still common in Irish. 12 means the youngest barrel was 12 years old. It doesn't mean it was all 12. There could be a 20-year-old barrel in this whiskey.
Oh.
Wow, if
I
it's
did
a
not
blend.
know that.
But no, they're blending from their own stock at their own distillery.
Okay, so single malt means
one location and all barley.
That's right.
But if they have, like say you have Glenfiddich 12, you could have 80% of it could be 12-year-old barrels, and then 10% could be 18-year-old barrels, and 5% could be a 25-year-old barrel, and they mix it according to get the flavor profile of Glenfiddich 12.
And all of that just implies that the higher the number, the stronger the barrel flavor profile is?
So the
or-
more the barrel, the lower the alcohol content. In Scotland and America, the alcohol content goes up. It's the heat difference and temperature difference. But for us, all you need to know is that means it's at least 12.
Got it.
It doesn't mean it's all 12.
So you're not going to get any like 10 barrels.
These are getting watered down. Let's drink this shit.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And for our Irish, we're doing Bushmills.
Oh, I didn't even think about the fact that there's a timing issue with this.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like the flavor will taste different.
Give it
in
3
a few
minutes
more
and this won't taste like whiskey anymore. I think when it comes to ice, bourbon and smoky Scotch stands up to ice a lot better than Irish whiskey, because Irish whiskey is so pretty and friendly that when it gets buried, it just vanishes. Right? So bourbon will still taste like bourbon, the Scotch will still taste slightly smoky, and the Irish whiskey will taste like super watered down whiskey.
Well, let's go in
Give it a try.
increasing order here.
Yeah,
so we'll
start with
start with
Irish.
the Irish. It's like water.
It's like water. That's because Irish whiskey is already so pretty.
Oh, yeah. That's already almost gone. I mean, as far as the flavor
really-
goes.
Now try your Glenfiddich 12.
Okay, this is the Scotch.
This is the Scotch on the rocks.
Definitely more flavor.
Right.
Without question.
This one tastes definitely like alcohol. Like this one did not even taste like alcohol. This one does though.
And the bourbon.
And does the bourbon have a smokier profile?
No. There's not gonna be any smoke in a bourbon. Well, I don't know that I've ever heard of a smoked bourbon. That's an interesting experiment we should do. See the difference?
Yeah.
It's much sweeter,
Yeah.
a little more smoke.
But all of these, I didn't expect it, but you're right. It's as though you turn down the volume
Yeah.
on it. So if you are an inexperienced whiskey drinker, I guess On the Rocks is the safest, easy. I guess
Yeah.
as a cocktail is the
Or
easiest.
if you're just in the mood for a drink that's not, you're not gonna have to work at it. And I need to relax. I need to not think about what I'm holding. I just want to drink.
Yeah.
Give me a whiskey on the rocks.
So you mentioned there were 4 ways, and so far we've talked about neat
Yes.
On the Rocks.
So let's clear
as
these.
a cocktail.
And I'll show you the last one.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you new glasses, and I'm gonna take this one for myself. First things first is this is already an aggressive whiskey. So we're doing this experiment with Bruichladdich, which is an Islay Scotch that's extremely smoky.
Okay, that was a lot of words that went way over my head.
Yeah.
Break them down one at a time.
Okay, first, Islay Scotch. Now we know that means it's made in Scotland. Islay means it's on an island just off the lower west coast of Scotland, just off of Campbelltown. It's spelled I-S-L-A-Y and pronounced Islay.
Okay.
Not Islay or Easley or Islay, it's Islay. Islay is where all the most famous, smokiest scotches that people know of tend to come from. Laphroaig, Bruichladdich, Cow Islay, right, and so on.
2 questions. First of all, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like, I guess different regions of Scotland have different flavor profiles.
Yes.
Like basically they're branded differently. Like we like to be more smoky and stuff. Second of all, where does the smoke flavor come from?
So it comes from peat. P-E-A-T, not Pete, a guy who lives in Scotland.
Yeah, this one guy has got the recipe.
Yeah, that guy. Him and Doug, between the two of them, they handle everything whiskey, yeah. No, peat is like peat moss or peat bog, or it's essentially...
It's a bunch of decayed
It's decayed matter.
moss.
And it accumulates between 1 to 5 centimeters a year, which is really slow. It's just condensing. And when you cut out the condensed mud, you cut it out in bricks, long, narrow bricks, and you set it out to dry. Traditionally, this was firewood in Scotland.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and so at what point do they smoke it?
Remember we talked about malting last time when
Yeah.
you have to let the grain crack and open up, and well, you got to stop it at some point because if it goes too far, it eats all its own sugar. Then there's nothing to ferment. Traditionally, the way they stopped it was by smoke drying it, like the way we smoke dry barbecue or smoke cook barbecue, right?
Sure, sure.
Indirect smoke, not direct heat. So not like cooking it, like roasting it, but like starting a kiln fire with peat redirecting the smoke across the barley and drying it out. Well, while the barley is wet, it absorbs smoke. Once it's dry, it stops absorbing smoke. But what you're burning and where you burn it and how much you burn, how much smoke ratio to grain, all of these will smoke the barley. And then when you make whiskey from it, it's now a smoky whiskey.
That's astonishing.
In America, they're doing this with things like mesquite, oak. They're making Scottish-style whiskeys using mesquite instead of peat.
So the original grains get malted. To stop the malting, you smoke it. That
Right.
smoke becomes part of the flavor profile when you later throw
Distill
that
it.
all in water and you make a mash.
Yeah.
And that flavor persists as you make
All the way to the end.
Is it wort? Is that what they call it?
Well, once it's yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
That's part of the
And-
process.
God. Wow.
And
wow.
then there's still the barrel.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
even in
and
the
then,
barrel.
Then you take the alcohol, put it in a barrel, and you adjust the flavor profile. How do any of these companies maintain any kind of consistency? It just seems like everything could go sideways. Is one bottle of anything as consistent as the other?
because you have guys in charge of making sure it is, right? So you're not working with a barrel and hoping it turns out right. It's like, no, we have 1,000, and we have another 1,000, and they're all different ages. We've got thousands of barrels in here. We're gonna pick from these barrels and mix them together until they taste like Glenfiddich 12.
Wow.
But yeah, they're very, very protective of all the processes and and as a matter of fact, one of my favorite things about whiskey history is that often things that seemed like superstition turned out to be absolute science. You have a copper still and it's old and it gets banged up and dented and, and kind of beat up. Well, now it comes time to replace it. Well, historically, sort of superstitiously, they would take the new still, design the new still, they bring it in, set it next to the old still, and they would proceed to go around and bang it up so that it matched the old still. Because they were so protective of there's something magical about
Everything
the still.
has to be exactly
you gotta
the same.
replicate it, right?
Yeah, you got to scare the ghosts out of the still.
It would have all the dents. They would dent it with hammers and things so it looked beat up like the old one. And then they would swap them out. Well, that was superstition at the time. Now what we know is scientists have proven that is absolutely crucial and effective. When you're distilling, which means you're evaporating alcohol out, every change of surface area changes how the evaporation recondenses.
Wow.
And so it absolutely affects the flavor. And they were absolutely right to do it. But they didn't do it because of science originally. And so yeah, you end up with a lot of these things like, don't change this process. We always use this water. We always distill when the sun is at 3:30. And now over the years, they discover why it's happening like that. And then you can replicate it without having those specific instances and know what you're doing.
A virgin must walk amongst the stills during with the first fawn of spring.
Yeah, that's Lafroig.
Oh, okay.
Or Lagavulin.
All right, so we're experiencing the fourth way to drink.
Yes. Now, this is called adding water to whiskey.
That sounds very technical.
If you go to a really fancy whiskey bar, you will regularly find that they serve you a glass of whiskey and then a still water in another glass with a straw. Why are they doing that?
I assume you just dump the one into the other, right?
Totally.
You monster!
Yeah, you go back and forth with the straw. Yeah. No, so you have a whiskey and you can add a little bit of water to it to open it up. You're basically creating a chemical reaction. This is different than adding a whiskey water, which is like, hey, I want a whiskey, but I don't like whiskey, so I want a lot of water in it.
Which is pretty close to what
Now
we were
we've
doing
moved
with On the
to
Rocks.
truly exploring a neat whiskey.
Okay.
This is already going to be kind of aggressive for you if you're not used to drinking Islay whiskey.
And by aggressive, I assume it's going to be very smoky.
Very smoky, very
intense.
rich.
Okay.
Okay, take a smell of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right? Now I want you to take a sip.
Stings
have
the
your
nostrils.
little reaction, and then I'm gonna take it up a notch. Are you ready for
all
it?
right, so-
wait, cilantro.
Sriracha.
Cilantro.
I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch.
Yeah, that's intense.
Down it goes.
That's like biting into an atomic fireball. Like, it's
Wow.
just
Set that back down.
100%. Yeah.
To quote Brian, wow!
Wow.
I never thought. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
This is what happens when you start serving people whiskey. I know. They get really punchy. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit of water to each. You're gonna watch this whiskey get about 40% more aggressive than it was before.
Really? That's counterintuitive.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Now, here's why. Remember, this is all science and chemistry. This is a decade-old beverage sitting in barrels for a decade to condense into what you see here. So that is a chemical composition.
Right.
In this chemical composition, there are some things that are water soluble, and there are other things that aren't water soluble. The things that aren't water soluble are things like oils, right? And when you heavily smoked whiskey with a lot of carbon, and there's a lot of oil in these whiskeys. And so what you're doing when you add about this much water, that's it.
What?
Just like 3 drops?
2 to 3 drops. Now what you're doing is you just created a mini chemical reaction in here, and all of the things that were water soluble absorbed, and all the things that weren't tried to escape the chemical reaction by going to the top of the glass.
Right.
And so now your next sip is all of the things that aren't water soluble and are oily and heavy and aggressive.
So you got to be careful not to shake it or stir it or disturb it too much?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can sort of, but yeah, if you leave it too long, it won't experience it. So there's yours. Cheers to you. Even the smell is more aggressive.
Wow. I did not see
Right?
that coming.
I know. I thought it would turn it down a
Yeah,
little bit,
that's
right?
exactly what I thought.
But see how you now have this clingy feeling on your tongue? That's because the oils are coating your tongue now, and they're remaining behind while everything else goes down.
You weren't kidding when you said aggressive. This
Yeah.
is serious.
Wow.
Now, remember, that doesn't work if you keep adding, then you keep getting more aggressive, because eventually the chemical reaction is, okay, think of it if you have your car in a driveway and it rains, and you got a big puddle in your driveway, and your car leaks just enough oil that you can see an oil sheen. That only exists when you only have a puddle. If it rains again,
Right.
that overwhelms
Eventually
the oil
washes
content,
it away.
disperses it away.
Yeah.
So same thing happens with this. If we keep adding water, we're eventually going to overwhelm the oils and go back down the other side of the curve. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so
absolutely.
let's show you what I mean by that. So let's just, without a doubt, take it back over the other side of the curve. And we're gonna do the equivalent of about 2 half glass straws. And this is important. If you're at a bar and you wanna try this, there are 2 things you have to be careful of. One, make sure that the bartender gives you still water, not sparkling water.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
2, make sure, and I learned this from Richard Patterson from Dalmore, make sure that you test your water before you add it. Because every once in a while, a bartender won't be paying attention and they'll give you hot water from the hot tap by accident. And you'll pick up this glass of water and add it to your whiskey, and it's like boiling water. And you don't want ice. When you say, give me a whiskey and a water, just say still water, no ice. Now you're gonna look like a snob in any bar that's not used to this,
Yeah.
but it gives you a chance to explore a whiskey.
I would imagine also like location matters because like whenever I go to Florida, they always have that kind of well-watery taste or smell to it.
I would ask for spring water if you can get it.
Yeah. How do
you
Bottled
know-
spring water.
How do you know what whiskeys to add it to?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll tell you. The answer is you're not gonna see this effect if the whiskey has low oils. If significant portions of the whiskey are all water soluble, then the reaction's gonna be minimal.
That's pretty much a question of just doing your research and knowing what
Try
whiskey
it.
you're ordering.
You'll never know. Yeah, some bourbons will do it, some won't. Some ryes will do it, some won't.
Okay.
The only way to know if it's right for a whiskey is to try it.
Yep.
And what you will discover is every whiskey you like slightly differently. So I like this whiskey just straight out of the bottle. This one I like 6 drops of water. This one I like 2 drops of water. This one I like a lot more water. This one I just don't like.
So this one is now officially overwatered.
Now let's try that and you'll see the difference. Now we're into a little bit more mellowed Islay whiskey. Notice
yeah.
that you still get the sour notes in there, but you don't get the punch in the throat.
Bite is definitely turned down a couple of notches.
So now what we've discovered is there's 3 ways to drink this one whiskey neat. Which do you like best of those 3? That's up to you.
And I guess
Yeah.
it depends on the whiskey, right?
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
like there's the whiskey and there's you, and you've got to figure out how you can meet in the middle to get the best experience.
Again, that there's no right way. It's whatever you prefer.
Now do we have time to test this on a bourbon?
Absolutely.
You make a very compelling argument.
I'm going to do a Texas bourbon.
Okay.
Okay.
Ranger Creek 36 small batch Houston, if I remember correctly.
36 makes me think it's 36 years old, but that's not the
No,
case.
that's their name for like 36 caliber.
Okay.
Right.
That's a
This
small
is
bottle.
9 months old. These are really expensive too.
I don't doubt it.
But this is a 9-month-old small barrel whiskey. Now, if you want to talk about small barrels while we drink this, we can.
If I was gonna guess, I would guess that a small barrel matters insofar as there's a larger proportion of contact to the barrel.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Now, what you'll find with smaller barrels, in my experience, is that a smaller barrel has a much faster wood effect, but it doesn't have a subtlety effect. So you can rush the coloring of the whiskey really fast, but you have a hard time replicating the subtleties and nuances that a large barrel and time give you. It's hard to cheat time, if not impossible.
So we're starting straight up.
Starting straight, take a small sip, and we'll add some water to this one. Now that's a classic high rye bourbon.
Huh.
Kind of spicy at the end.
Yep.
Kind of chocolatey.
The difference between this one and this one is
So different.
so far.
Yeah.
Night and day, yeah.
So now we're gonna do the same amount that we did to the Scotch, and what you will find, and I don't actually know the answer to this, I haven't done this to Ranger Creek, what you'll find is whether or not there are oil components in this whiskey that are heavy. Science. No, it just got mild.
Yeah. Yeah, just watered it down.
Notice the difference?
Yeah.
So what that means is the oil components in this whiskey are low, or the components that are non-water soluble are lower.
Okay.
But I still like it. I actually liked it better without the water.
Yeah.
It was more interesting.
Yeah, then you had to ruin it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the 4 ways of drinking whiskey. In a cocktail,
Hey, no drink shaming here. Yeah. Any way you want to enjoy whiskey is a good way.
sorry, Trevor. So cocktails, on the rocks, neat, and with a tiny bit of water,
That's right.
which counterintuitively can kickstart a whiskey.
It really can.
I had no idea.
Does the same thing work with like when you get it on the rocks? Do you get the same effect?
No,
or
no, because the
temperature?
the amount of water happening all at once is way too much, way too fast, and the temperature will destroy any subtlety differences that you would have found anyway.
All right, let's toast to Daniel
Daniel!
and the Whiskey
I
Academy.
like that kind of toast.
They're finally here, and I could not be more excited. We got 2 bikes from Rad Power Bikes. I got the Rad Wagon, you got the Rad Rover. What did your wife say when she found out that this was happening?
Turns out she's always wanted one, and it was like I uncovered this secret desire. I had no idea.
All right, I have no idea how long it'll take to assemble. I figure we'll set yours up on the left side and I'll set mine up on the right, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right. I am an avid cyclist, right? I've done 2 Olympic distance triathlons. I did a 100-mile bike ride in one day. But the problem is I don't want to get on my bike, like the nearest grocery store is 7 miles away, and I don't want to ride 14 miles round trip just to come back with like a backpack full of whatever. The idea of the Rad Wagon being able to let me come home with 4 or 5 bags of groceries is pretty sweet.
There we go. Oh, whoa. The tires on mine are
Oh my God,
monstrous.
you have a monster truck of bikes. Look at this thing. Holy cow.
Yeah, I like it.
That's insane.
Have you ever had your bicycle wheel fall off while you were riding it?
No, is that a thing?
Yeah, it used to happen to me all the time.
Wait, what?
It's like rattle around, everything, jump it and crash it, and then one day I'm going up for a wheelie and the wheel just rolls off
Oh, geez.
down the road.
This is like about as DIY as I like to get. Like,
Yeah.
just screw a few things in, feel like, oh, I made this, I built this.
I'm a man.
I'm a builder, man. You don't have a beast of a Rad Wagon.
I think mine is probably faster.
His wheels are bigger.
We're like second graders arguing
exactly.
about our shoes, how they make
it's
us
like
run
these,
faster.
These make you faster. Look at these treads. And you also can pump up the tongue. It was a dark time, Penny. Let's not talk about it.
Man, I gotta tell you, so much of this is super intuitive.
Yeah. Josie, whose looks cooler, mine or your dad's?
Yours.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
They're totally rad.
I appreciate your childish colloquialisms, but that actually means that they're fueled by uranium.
They're radioactive power bikes.
Yeah.
That's a
Never-
warning. That's not a brand.
Never open that black box. There's yellow cake uranium inside that black box. I know yours was more work, and yes, mine does look cooler, but I'm liking the carrying
Oh
capacity.
yeah, no, I think that's gonna be pretty great.
Pretty slick.
Jason,
Yes,
you wanna ride bikes?
let's do it.
I'm riding too.
All right. So right now there's no pedal assist. I'm in the lowest gear and I'm having to work to get up this hill. Now I'm gonna turn on level 1 pedal assist, level 2 pedal assist, level 3 pedal assist. Up, changing gears, blowing past everyone. Ah, so fast! 17, 18 miles an hour. How's it feel? Great. Dude, like hills are nothing. Yeah, we're going fast. Dude,
you can feel that moment it kicks in and you're just Superman all of a sudden, right? That was amazing. Come on, girl.
This is the best feeling
How did it feel?
For someone who is as old and enfeebled and rapidly decaying as I am, it felt like I was alive again.
You felt 12, right?
Yes,
Dude,
yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, you could feel the moment that the powered assist kicks in, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can't feel it kick in if you have it on the entire time.
Yeah. Well, I definitely caught you just riding the throttle like it's a motorcycle.
Yeah, I just pedal.
Yeah, whatever.
Like I'm some sort of peasant.
It did not feel like we just rode 3 miles. Like I didn't even break a sweat. And I gotta tell you, like I love riding my bike, but I hate showing up totally drenched in sweat. And if this will get me up all the hills and allow me with this
Yeah.
cargo space to actually do some decent shopping, loaded up with 4 or 5 bags, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I have the Batmobile of the Rad Rovers.
Yeah, you do. I'm not gonna lie. That one looks way cooler. But this one's very, very functional. It was a blast putting my kids on there.
That's good for a family man.
All right. Come on, let's ride bikes.
Ah!